Well, Allison, it's nice to get a chance to sit down with you and we can think a little about what you've got upcoming here. So, congratulations on this position. That's kind of a neat thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. It'll be a different transition just because, I've been at Southeast in a different capacity for 9 years and have worked with those people as a colleague for 9 years. And even though I'm still a colleague, it'd just be a different role. So I've just been kind of thinking about, how to transition into that, continue to keep those relationships, but knowing those relationships will change slightly, and then also taking on a different role with the 2 administrators that we have in the building and kind of coming in to be part of that team.
Okay, so there's sort of the transitioning a little bit into being in a bit of a boss capacity over people that you've worked with before as colleagues, and then becoming a colleague with people who've been your bosses before.
Yes, nicely put. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Which of those gives you a little more concern right now, or which one are you chewing with a little bit more?
I think right now what I've been thinking about the most is probably just the relationship and dynamics between Emily, Michelle, and I.
Okay.
When there's 3 of us.
Yeah.
Just because I think all 3 of us are very... I know that we have a good working relationship, but we're all very different when it comes to certain things. And so I'm just kind of thinking about how adding a 3rd person to that relationship that's already there, how that's going to change things for them, change things for me, and trying to kind of navigate that and figure out kind of like where I fit in.
Are you replacing someone that's come in, or is this a newly created?
Well, we had someone in the building that was half-time last
Okay.
year, or part of this year, but then hasn't been in our building since about early
So
December.
kind of a new ad.
It's kind of a new in the sense
Okay.
that it's full-time and
Have you had some conversations about how duties that were divided between 2 people get divided among 3, and what procedures the 3 of you have for meeting and strategizing, or developing a shared vision?
yeah, we've talked just preliminary talk about some of that, and I think that's probably what I'm having some anxiety about, is that we just, with so much going on at the end of the year, we just haven't really nailed down a time to sit together and kind of flesh all that out. So I have kind of like this idea of things that I'll be doing, and kind of the division of duties between the 3 of us. But that second piece that you mentioned, just kind of like our shared vision and like how we're going to communicate, and kind of that hierarchy of like what freedom do I have to do things make decisions on my own versus what do I need to run by Michelle and Emily. Those types of things we haven't really had any conversations about, so I think that's kind of what I'm kind of thinking about more.
Sure, and I suppose there's other things too, like how do you best motivate and hold each other accountable a little bit, because you don't have anybody else. You guys are the adult supervision, right?
Yeah,
That's pretty cool, though, right? But you can effectuate some big change that way if you work together, I imagine. Are you still on teacher contract, or do you have summer contract too?
I have a contract that's somewhat between an administrator, like a principal contract versus a teacher contract. Okay. So I think I have like 200 and some odd days.
There's some number of days in the summer, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I suppose there's a costs and benefits to having this bigger conversation with the 2 of them when everybody else is gone, students are gone, most of the teachers are checked out, versus trying to get things clarified now or sooner.
Right.
What might be the best for you in terms of, do you still have some thinking to do as you approach that, or?
Yeah, I think one of the things I want to do is when we do sit down and meet, I want to kind of put together because I know a little bit about what they're going to expect from the dean and what my role will be. When we sit down to talk, I want to kind of have some ideas that I'm ready to present and talk about as well, and kind of some ideas I have as far as like the different roles and how I can fit into the team. So it doesn't, I think I'll need to do that. I think Michelle has a really strong, we're good friends, and she has a very strong personality, but I think if I don't come up with some ideas, then it's going to be all of what she wants from the position, which I want it to be what she wants too, but it also has to fit myself and Emily and like the whole group. Does that make sense? I don't know. That was kind of confusing.
You wanna be able to carve out a niche for your own role and have that be an expression of you, not just execution of a list of duties that somebody gives you. It sounds like okay. And some of that will involve, because are they folding in the MTSS position away or not? I thought those were continuing at junior high, or
they are. Yeah. Well.
Okay.
So I'll keep some of that, and then we're going to have a new person take on some of the stuff that I do.
Okay.
So it'll be kind of a mishmash this year. But yeah.
All right. Do you have some? Where are you in terms of having thought about some of these projects that you want to work on, or sort of ideas that you have? Since you mentioned that you want that conversation with Michelle or with the two of them to be at least inclusive of a lot of sort of your vision and your ideas instead of just you receiving some marching orders or whatever.
Right. So where am I at on that?
Have you thought through a little of what you want that to be? Because if you want to be able to shape your role, what does it look like? You know, if you could do the what if thing.
Right. Yeah, I have. I think one of the big things that I've kind of thought through is just kind of based on just what I've heard from Michelle and Emily this year, is that I know that with our SAC, I feel like they, and maybe because we don't have a dean, they feel like they deal with a lot of minor behaviors. And I think I just want to come in with kind of a plan, or with an idea that I would like to have the freedom to kind of deal with that stuff on my own and not have it be a bothersome to them, and just, you know, to have the freedom to make some of those decisions and deal with those things without running everything by them. I think that's one thing that I kind of want to talk to them about. Michelle is she's kind of a control freak when it comes to things. So she has a hard time letting go of some things. So she'll send a message of, I don't want to be burdened with this. But if you don't deal with it the way she thought you should deal with it, then it's like, well, why did that happen? So
right, and she wants to get back into it.
She wants to get back into it.
Okay.
So I think I just need to have a message of like, you know, if you hired me to do this and you feel that I'm a capable person, I need to show that to you, and you need to give me the freedom, and you have to trust me that I'm going to be able to do this in a way that best serves our students, I guess, is one way I kind of want to approach some things, is that I do want to have the autonomy to do things out of the dean's office the way I want to do them, without having to run every single thing by Michelle or Emily.
Yeah. And that's, I can imagine that being a bit of a challenge, right?
Yeah.
You know, here's somebody that, you know, has been your boss, right? And has been the sort of, at times, like, we want all these little bits done this way, it sounds like. And has had a pretty detailed vision for what she wanted, you know, her employees to do, I guess. And now that change of role, one of the things you sounds like you're a little bit worried about is whether she's going to micromanage you versus give you a little bit more latitude.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's a really important thing to get some clarity on, one way or the other.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd like to be able to control a bit of that.
Yeah.
Does that get made more challenging by the fact that behavior type things, at least in the last handful of years, seem like they've moved to where you have to address them all on a kind of case by case basis, rather than, if you imagine an old world where people could just say, I'm writing this behavior code, right?
And so, this behavior matches here, so that's the consequence.
In that kind of world, you could write the policy and run it past her for her stamp of approval. She could change one little thing here and there and say, this is too harsh for that.
Yeah.
Now we'll stamp it.
Right.
But it's probably not realistic to have a
I mean, and while we have
policy, of course you have guidelines.
Right. Exactly. And that's a great point. It's just, you know, and that's But that's also the way that they deal with behaviors too in the building, is kind of a case by case, student by student, what we know, what's going on in their, in their lives, So, yeah, I think that makes it hard, because if it were black and white, then there wouldn't be an issue.
You could craft your policy,
right?
Submit it for editing, right? It's hard to do that. Okay, so I mean that's kind of one level of challenges. So you feel like maybe a little more thinking through of how you want to sell and explain that concern, and what other aspects of your vision. I mean, you sort of want to say, one of the things you mentioned a little bit was, here's these things I can take off your plate. Right? Like, are there things that are just knucklehead things that you'd like taken off your plate? And hopefully some of them aren't awful. Right, to feel like you might get a few of the leftovers. Right? But then there are other things that you're eager to want to do. Visit for a minute or two about what some of the things are that you're really excited about. I mean, you mentioned this SAC behavior thing.
I'm excited for that. I don't know, like I'm just excited to make some changes. Obviously a lot is going to be, I'm excited to have the opportunity to have the ability to work more with the families too, not just the kids, because I think a lot of obviously student issues can drive from, communication with home, parents not feeling involved. So I'm excited to be able to do some home visits this summer and reach out to families. I'm excited to just get to know parents more, and hopefully get them into the building more, get them more involved, help them feel comfortable with what's going on, and just have that constant communication with them. I think that's a piece sometimes with a lot of our families that we're missing. So I'm hoping to kind of bridge that gap and help build some of those relationships.
Those are two really interesting areas. On the one hand, you've got this, like, you want to handle student behaviors at the sort of low-level preventative kind of area, and then also, you want to be able to sort of do the family support thing in a more meaningful way than you've been able to in the past, with sort of splitting between multiple roles. And I think, I'd be hopeful that Michelle, would be receptive to the idea that those two support each other nicely, and that maybe that's a vision for a way where you can, really kind of control how you foster change among some of the students that really need it the most.
And then there's like the third element of working with staff and helping, staff build capacity to, whether it's, and I think the coaching role will be really helpful in that, just like the ability to know how to have a coaching conversation, a reflective conversation, especially when it comes to, working with a teacher if there's an issue with a student in that class, and helping mediate that situation, or helping coach the teacher if needed on skills that might help that student in that situation or in the class with whatever, if it's a behavior issue or whatever. So I'm excited for those relationships with teachers to grow and to hopefully have a broader impact, on the whole school, just working with teachers in that capacity, I guess.
So you want to be able to draw on some of the experiences that we've developed over the last 3 or 4 years of taking people through a thinking process. What'll be the most useful 1 or 2 nuggets? Because you may not go with the 5-step conversational world, right? I don't know.
I think one thing that
maybe I'll have a whole different mat.
I might.
I have no idea, but if there are just a small handful of things that you're like, those are things I want to be able to not forget and borrow, even if there's other baggage that you don't feel like bringing with you.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know if I can. I got to think about that. But I think a lot about the questions on the reflective map. I think sometimes, especially, I know I keep going back to behavior, but I know that will be a main focus. Sometimes I think when a situation happens with students in class, in that moment, it's hard for both the student and the staff member to reflect upon what's happening. You're in the moment and you say things, you make decisions, but afterwards, when you kind of calm down, you can kind of go back and look at it from a different lens and kind of reflect upon what happened and say, I could have done this differently, or maybe this would have worked. So I think some of those questions on the reflective map will be really helpful. And I think that you have to be able to do that in order to make change in your practice. So I think that will be probably, that's probably more of a reactive approach, I guess. You know, if I really wanted to start off strong with teachers, maybe